Thank you, Gabby, and I'm very pleased to join you all because of how important this election is. As you've already heard, I want to add one more reason, and that is the first thing that follows the United States Census, and it's critically important, as Dolores has already indicated, that we continue to make sure that every household is counted, and more important, that every person in every household is included in that count. The census does play a critical role in determining how we're represented in our legislative bodies. First and foremost, right after the census count is concluded, the census indicates how congressional seats, 435 members of the House of Representatives, will be redistributed among the states. It's critically important that our communities be counted because that can lead to increases in representation. For example, after the last census, the state of Texas, one of your target states, was the big winner. It gained 4 congressional seats as a result largely of the growth of the Latino and African American communities. Unfortunately, it was then put in the hands of a legislature that's hostile to representation of those two communities. And what we first saw after the census a decade ago was the creation of those 4 new seats, all of them to be represented by white conservatives. It took litigation filed by MALDEF and many others to challenge that configuration, and resulting in 2 of the 4 new seats being represented by an African American and a Latino in the Congress. So it does take sometimes additional fights, but the first step is to get the census count right. But the second step is to try to make sure that the line drawers are right as well. So this election is not only critical because we're electing a president, but also because we are electing legislators, governors, local officials, many of whom are still empowered to draw the lines for the next decade. Representation on city councils, school boards, county boards, state legislatures, and certainly Congress are largely determined by these line drawers. And we're electing many of them at this November's election. Another reason it's critical to participate in making sure that we get out the vote, that we get folks registered, and then everyone registered shows up and votes. Of course, in this pandemic, we face additional challenges in November with voting. It will be a public health concern for many people to go to the polls. We therefore must work today, months ahead of the November election, to try to increase the availability of remote voting options. First and foremost, that means trying to ensure that everyone who would like to has the right to receive a ballot by mail and to return their ballot by mail. There are a number of states around the country that don't require you to have a reason to request a ballot by mail, but there are unfortunately too many states, including the state of Texas, with which I am particularly aware because MALDEF was founded in Texas and still maintains one of our largest and most important offices there. The state of Texas requires you to meet a very narrow range of reasons in order to receive an absentee ballot. That means too many folks who would prefer to remote vote, to vote by mail, will be denied that right in the state of Texas. But there is still time to try to change what the state of Texas does, whether that's through congressional action or through action in the states, to ensure that everyone who would like to has a right to vote by mail. Of course, we know that for too many, particularly in the African American and Latino communities, voting by mail is not really an option for any number of reasons. First, too many within our community will require assistance in voting, and they will need that assistance by voting in person. Second, some folks in our communities, and we can all speculate as to why that might be, will not receive a ballot even if they request one, will not be mailed a ballot, and so we need to make the ability to vote in person an option for those folks. Third, there are some folks who understandably will not trust that their vote, once they mail it, will actually be counted, and they will desire to at least turn in their ballot in person, if not to vote in person. So consistent with public health guidelines, we still must make sure that the option of voting in person is widely available to ensure that we don't have long lines, huge crowds that would violate the kind of public health guidance we've received in this ongoing pandemic. So we need to make ample opportunity to vote, including the opportunity to vote early prior to an election, even on weekend days. The opportunity to vote ahead of the Tuesday of the election will help to make sure that there are not huge crowds violating public health guidelines at election places on election day. We also have to make sure that there are sufficient polling places left open. Even if majorities of folks ask for vote by mail options, we still have to make sure that there are ample, nearby, easily accessed places to vote in person. These are some of the challenges that we face in this particular election created by the pandemic. At the same time, we know that there are folks on the other side who are taking advantage of what we face to try to restrict the right to vote. We see a president who himself has voted by mail, now asserting that allowing more and more people to vote by mail would create fraud. Of course, he has absolutely no credibility on the issue of fraud, because we remember that in the last election, he asserted that millions of fraudulent voters are the only thing that prevented him from having a majority or plurality of the popular vote. Of course, it was far from true. There was absolutely no evidence today. In the last 50 years, there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud anywhere in the country, tied to vote by mail or tied to anything else. So these assertions that somehow making the option of voting by mail available broadly somehow will lead to voter fraud is the fraud that we have to prepare for and prepare to respond to. They are interested in preventing our people from voting by making these false assertions of fraud, and we must be prepared to combat them. We can work together to create laws at federal, state, and local level to ensure that the vote is readily available despite the pandemic and compliant with public health guidance. We can do that if we work together to ensure not only that everyone is registered, but that we change the laws to facilitate their participation, and that we ensure that everyone has the information they need. The simple fact is that too many of us lack familiarity with voting by mail and will need good instruction and education about how to do so effectively. So we have to make sure that folks have all the information they need and can take all of the steps necessary, particularly in the face of folks who don't want them to vote, to participate, to vote, and to make a real difference, not just in the November election, but for the reasons I mentioned earlier, in elections for the next 10 years as we look at redistricting in 2021 and 2022. I encourage all of us to participate in this endeavor, and together I know we will prevail.